You're listening to Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and MPR. As always, I'm Grady, and unfortunately, Josh will not be joining us on Discord this week. There has been some horrible winter storm over in his area. Luckily, there is quite a bit to talk about with Saturday night's main event having happened last weekend, and then the Royal Rumble coming up. First thing to talk about, I think, with Saturday night's main event, we were meant to get a fourth match that didn't end up turning into a match. It was Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu. We thought maybe this could be the coming out party for Jacob Fatu. Could he get a win over Cody Rhodes? Wasn't quite what we ended up getting. Instead, we just got a brutal brawl throughout the arena. It eventually ended when Drew McIntyre came out and inserted himself into the brawl and took out both men. Kind of complicating this whole WWE Championship scene. We already had, well, later on in the night, we will have four guys, Zayn, Priest, Orton, and Williams, all going to vie for the number one contendership to see who will face Drew McIntyre. That's already 5 people, involved in that main event scene. You got Cody Rhodes and Jacob Fatu, who Drew McIntyre poked his nose into. That brings it up to 7. And then you look ahead to next weekend at the Royal Rumble, potentially the winner of that match picking the WWE champion as well. That's potentially 8 people who really want a shot at him. And I feel like this is gonna set up the Elimination Chamber for the SmackDown World Championship. Often we see the Royal Rumble deciding one men and one women's world title match, and then we see the Elimination Chamber deciding the other ones. It really feels like there's just so many people floating at the top that a SmackDown number one contendership Elimination Chamber, I would actually have to make cuts in terms of who ends up in that, versus the Raw one, where maybe I've got to look around a little bit more, especially seeing what the landscape looks like after Royal Rumble, if AJ Styles is still around. The SmackDown scene is just so heated at the top there, with so many different people. So we did get that showcase for Jacob Fatu. It was a bit more of a showcase of his brutality and his willing to hold his own when he is against Cody Rhodes in a big brawl like that, which was definitely something to see, and I think proved a little bit of something that he can hang, even if it isn't bell to bell. Whereas for Cody Rhodes, it just kind of shows that different side of him. Maybe he'll turn heel. We'll say that every month, and he won't. But maybe this is the chance that we're going to see something not necessarily heelish, but maybe a bit more visceral, a bit more angry. We know that Drew McIntyre brought it out of him, took him into that 3 Stages of Hell match, was taunting his family. Maybe that demon that he ripped out of Cody Rhodes isn't going to go back in so easy, and so we are going to get a bit more of an aggressive Cody Rhodes, but it won't be a heelish Cody Rhodes, just somebody's willing to do a little bit more to win, maybe, and a little bit more touchy around certain topics like his father, which is really easy to build a storyline off of. I'm going to talk about that Fatal 4-Way number one contendership match then, because this does tie in nicely to that. It was Sami Zayn, Damian Priest, Randy Orton, and Trick Williams. Winner goes on to the Royal Rumble, which we'll talk about in a little bit, to take on Drew McIntyre. We'd predicted coming into this, Saturday night's main event is in Canada, and with the Royal Rumble being where that is, it makes a whole lot of sense for Sami Zayn to be the one here. If Cody still held the title, maybe I would have been rooting for a Cody Rhodes versus Randy Orton match at the Rumble, if we're not going to get it at WrestleMania. But with the people that we had involved and with Drew holding that belt, Sami Zayn makes a whole lot of sense. They do have a bunch of history between them, and the crowds at both Saturday night's main event and Royal Rumble are going to be firmly behind Sami Zayn, which will elevate that match in terms of how much everybody cares about it, as well as it elevated the match last weekend as well. I think this continues to highlight how Trick Williams can hang. You get a little worried when somebody comes through to the main roster and they propel themselves straight up the card. You're talking about hanging with Randy Orton, hanging with Sami Zayn, even Damian Priest, former World Heavyweight Champion. This isn't like an easy audience for Trick Williams to jump onto and to see how it all goes, and he held his own. He was my preferred pick out of this just because I wanted a bit of a surprise, and I don't want to see Damian Priest, Drew McIntyre again. I think Randy's a better opponent for Cody, but we got what we got, and I'm not mad. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out coming into the Royal Rumble. Talking about that WWE Championship match, McIntyre-Zayn, I'm 50-50 on it. I think that Drew McIntyre retaining makes the most sense just because we did just transfer the title to him. But with the pay-per-view being where the pay-per-view is, it could go the other way just for, be it shock factor, be it for something else. But there's so much more there with all of these people wanting to get at Drew McIntyre that the Elimination Chamber match just makes way more sense if Drew McIntyre is champion and people are, fighting for the shot to take him on, versus if Sammy wins the title here, now it's like, I don't know, Sammy Orton doesn't make a whole lot of sense, a few other options don't. I just don't feel like that road to WrestleMania will be as well defined. Maybe 60-40 is a little bit better there. I'm leaning towards the Drew McIntyre victory, but if a Sami Zayn victory does happen, it'd be what it be. Josh has sent through his picks, even though he can't be here in person. He did pick Drew McIntyre for this match. I think it aligns pretty well with what we were both thinking last week. Sammy gets the pop here, Sammy gets the pop next weekend, but ultimately Drew McIntyre does have that new champion buff, and it can help him get through. We got a match, the Women's Tag Team Championships, hotly contested. If they also ended up in an Elimination Chamber match, I wouldn't be surprised just with the amount of talent and the amount of teams that they have in that division right now. But it was the champions, Rio versus the Judgment Days, Liv Morgan and Roxanne Perez. Josh said maybe it's where they begin to fracture the Judgment Day. They seemed to hold strong on the weekend. They did lose, but they did hold strong. Raquel Rodriguez poking her nose in at the end of the match, and then Stephanie Vaquer coming out, evening the odds, literally making it a 3-on-3 match, and the faces come away with the win. Something that I'd thought was going to happen for a few weeks now, we did get on Raw, which was that 3-on-3, the Judgment Day girls all teaming up to take on the faces, Vaquer, Ripley, and Sky. It was a good match. Ultimately, the faces walked away with the win. Does alleviate a bit of concern I had around potentially one of them walking away with the Rumble win, be that Ripley or Sky. I think they're doing pretty well in this tag division, and I'm never a big fan of when the Women's Tag Team Championships begin to intermingle in terms of double champs. In terms of what they're doing right now, that's perfectly fine. I enjoy it. The Judgment Day with three of them makes sense here. I did think that Liv Morgan was going to be the one going after Vaquer, but if they're saving that, be it from a Royal Rumble victory or from something else, I could definitely see them taking a different angle at that or a different stab at that. And then our last match from Saturday night's main event, it was AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura put together in the last moments. We had people on SmackDown telling, AJ Styles, are you sure this is what you want to do? Do you really want to put your career on the line? Sort of having no faith in AJ Styles, thinking he's going to lose to Gunther. Don't put your career on the line. Don't do it, buddy. And Shinsuke instead is like, hey, if you're going to do it, can we have one last banger? And AJ Styles obliged. There was still a spot open in storyline at Saturday night's main event, and they came out in over 20 minutes of a banger, just the two of them turning the clock back like this was New Japan. Amazing match between the two of them. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Thoroughly enjoyed the callbacks, the finish. It did feel kind of like a last hurrah if you were already on the fence between who was going to win between Styles and Gunther, this has to tip you over to the Gunther side. And if this didn't, on Raw we got AJ Styles versus CM Punk, another match that we haven't had in a long while. Definitely haven't had on a like a big company, and it was pretty good until the finish, with Finn Balor. But those two were putting on a clinic as well. AJ Styles doesn't seem to want a tour like John Cena had, where it was the whole year was focused on him. But he does have a banger with Shinsuke here at Saturday night's main event. He had a banger with CM Punk on Raw. With Finn poking his nose in, maybe he can have a banger with Finn on SmackDown. Could always be a possibility, but all signs do continue to point to him losing at the Royal Rumble. I know Josh here has picked Gunther as the winner. There was obviously some stuff that Shinsuke Nakamura posted on social media as well that seems to hint towards AJ Styles being finished at the Royal Rumble. Same pay-per-view he debuted at for the WWE. I'm of two minds. I think the obvious outcome is Gunther winning, AJ Styles riding off into the sunset. I didn't think it was going to be this early. I really did think that he would bounce back, pick up a victory here, and whether he's going to rehash the Ric Flair storyline, the next time I lose, I'm retired, or whether he'll just have a bit of a run until Gunther comes up against him later on at SummerSlam. I don't know, it feels a little, not rushed, but a little unceremonious to just have him come straight in after the John Cena retirement and just boom, next feud, retire AJ Styles as well. If it's what AJ wants, coolio, all behind it. If it is some sort of last minute swerve where they've really been making it look like it's going to be his last match, but I don't know, maybe it's not, then I wouldn't be mad at that either. I'm always glad to see more AJ Styles. I think he's got it still. I understand with him wanting to step away, but he's still putting on bangers, so I'm still enjoying every second of AJ Styles that we have. Well, that is roughly halfway through the show. Josh still picks the songs. He picks the songs every week, even when he cannot make it, and he has picked Sami Zayn's theme, the number one contender for that WWE Championship next weekend. And you're back for Wrestling Roundup on FreeFM, ArrowFM, and MPR. I'm Grady, and Josh is not here due to unfortunate weather where he lives, so it is just me. Royal Rumble at the moment, at the time of recording, has 4 matches announced for it. We've already talked AJ Styles, Gunther. Josh and I both agree Gunther is the most likely candidate. I do have a little niggling scratch in the back of my head that says this is all working up to make us believe that and AJ Styles is going to come out victorious, but let's see how it goes. Both Josh and I think Drew McIntyre again is the favorite for the WWE Championship, but maybe Sami Zayn with that crowd and with the event location can pull it out. Just not as likely. That does leave us with the 2 big Royal Rumble matches. Let's start off with the Women's Royal Rumble match. At the time of recording, there is 17 entrants announced. We have Io Sky, Rhea Ripley, Roxanne Perez, Liv Morgan, Raquel Rodriguez, Bayley, Lyra Valkyria, Asuka, Chelsea Green, Jordynne Grace, Charlotte Flair, Alexa Bliss, Nia Jax, Lash Legend, Julia, Maxine Dupree, and Becky Lynch announced this week on Raw. There is some strong candidates in that list. Jumping straight to Josh's pick, Josh has gone all in on Chelsea Green. I know in WWE Unreal last year, there was a pitch of Chelsea Green winning it, and what an awesome moment it would make. Entirely possible that they run that back, and they do Chelsea Green here. She had a shot at Jade Cargill in a non-title match on SmackDown this week. It didn't go very well for her, but that doesn't mean that she can't earn herself another shot and give it another go against Jade Cargill, or maybe switch it up, head to Raw, take on Stephanie Vaquer. I don't know if her odds would be any better over there. If I look at Sportsbet Australia for the favourites to come out on top, it is actually tied at the moment. Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan, top two. And I think that's interesting because that was kind of the two that I was tossing up. About a month ago, I wrote up my predictions. I just sent it to the group chat with the Roundup guys on where I thought everything was going to go. And I actually predicted a tie between Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan, because I think Bianca Belair versus Jade Cargill is the money match for SmackDown, and I think that Liv Morgan versus Stephanie Vaquer is the money match for Raw. And where that leaves me is I didn't really want either of them to earn it in the Elimination Chamber. I think that a Bianca Belair return into the pop and then winning is most likely. It is what we see often in Royal Rumbles. You get kind of two types. You get the return pop into a win, or you get the announced early into a win. But I mentioned it earlier in the show, I thought that the women's tag team Elimination Chamber could occur, and so that there's only one men's and one women's Elimination Chamber, I had to figure out another way to get both of our world title matches. And so I had Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan tying here, both of them going for their respective titles, and then the Women's Elimination Chamber being used for the tag teams. Do I think that's all going to happen? Probably not. I think that's a bit of a pipe dream. But I still think that Bianca Belair and Liv Morgan end up in world title matches at WrestleMania if Bianca is healthy. That's the big question. If Bianca Belair is not ready to come back, then that kind of throws us all up in the air. It does put Liv Morgan into the favourite position, and it does open up the field a little bit more. If I look further down the list in terms of people, again on Sportsbet Australia, we've got Tiffany Stratton, pretty high odds coming in, and then everybody's kind of bunched up here, but we got names like Rhea Ripley, Jordynne Grace, AJ Lee, Roxanne Perez, all kind of vying for a spot around here in terms of favorites. Jordynne Grace is probably the most interesting one from that. We have seen her recently called up from NXT to SmackDown, but she's getting face to face with Jade Cargill a lot. We saw it a little bit a couple weeks ago, a little bit last week, and then this previous SmackDown, she's really getting up there and sort of getting in arguments with Jade. I think that could potentially be our buffer match, where you may have Bianca Belair win the Royal Rumble, but that match isn't until April. There's already a lot of heat from the fans on Jade Cargill for not defending her championship, from not getting ring time as champion. So you can put a Jade Cargill versus Jordynne Grace at Elimination Chamber. You can build it as this big sort of premium match that you want to use. Maybe Jordynne Grace isn't quite ready, but she knows that if she wins this, she's going to WrestleMania to face Bianca Belair as champion. Ultimately doesn't get there. We do still get our Jade Bianca match, but Jordynne Grace gets a big introduction to the main roster coming up, you know, standing toe to toe with Jade Cargill, showing she deserves to be here. And then maybe it's Grace Bianca Belair that we do longer term when we come down from the Bianca Belair Jade Cargill storyline, because that's got a lot of meat to it. That is still telling, you know, you rewind, you add Naomi into it, and you add that whole story element. We're looking over a year now of meat into that feud. Held back a little bit by Bianca Belair's injury, but I think that makes the return and the WrestleMania match just all that more special here. So that's where I think is most obvious. Liv Morgan could get herself in another way. It's just a lot harder to do a surprise return in an Elimination Chamber match, and my heart is pretty set on a Jade Cargill Bianca Belair WrestleMania match. But I know that there are people out there who don't agree with that. Obviously, Josh, one of them with his Chelsea Green pick, but hey, one of us might be right. Switching into the men's matchup at the time of recording, 15, Cody Rhodes, Gunther, Jey Uso, Rey Mysterio, Dragon Lee, Penta, Roman Reigns, Solo Sikoa, Jacob Fatu, all of the Vision, so Bron Breakker, Logan Paul, Bronson Reed, and Austin Theory, as well as Javon Evans and the debuting Oba Femi. This is an interesting field. You got big hitters in here, Cody Rhodes, Gunther, Roman Reigns, got to count a bit of the Vision in there as well, who, are pretty top of the card. Even Jey Uso, previous winner of this matchup, even though he is in the tag team division at the moment. So a few heavy hitters, and I expect a couple more to be announced before we get to the weekend, and a couple more to just show up on the weekend as well. Question marks over Rey Mysterio due to a bit of an injury he had this week on Raw, if he will make it or not. I would be really interested in Penta and Phoenix both being in this match and interacting. I still kind of want them to team up at WrestleMania, whether it be this year or next year or the year after, and that could be the catalyst for that. You could have some members of the Usos or some members of the New Day in this matchup, and maybe Penta and Phoenix have to work together to take them out. There's some juice there. The Royal Rumble builds the WrestleMania storylines, and I just want to see them do a little bit of an interaction. It's where we do get the cross-brand interaction the most, especially if Rey Mysterio does have to pull out. I think Phoenix is a great slot in there. The entirety of the Vision being in the match is interesting. I think this whole match will probably be built around them. If any of them is going to come out on top, it is Bron Breakker. He is that star that they are trying to build from this. We had the segment on Raw this week with Adam Pearce apologizing. It'll be interesting to see how they factor into it. I'll talk about my winner prediction a little bit in a second. Javon Evans, great to see that his injury isn't going to hold him back from being in the Royal Rumble. I really want to see a big showcase from this guy. Don't need to see eliminations. Just let him do his thing. Be bouncy. Show everybody what you got and have a showcase. The Dark Horse Oba Femi, announced this week on Raw, could be the difference maker. When we see this, I want to see Oba Femi Gunther. I want to see a rematch between Oba Femi Cody Rhodes. I want to see Oba Femi Roman Reigns. I want to see Oba Femi Bron Breakker. There's so many different matchups that I could see coming out of this that I think this is going to really set up Oba Femi for what he is going to be going forward. We saw him vacate the NXT Championship, and hey, maybe he wins. Who knows? I talked about the Vision potentially coming out with a victory. That is the prediction that Josh has thrown through to me. Bron Breakker coming out with a win. I know he called it a few months ago before the match with CM Punk happened at the start of the year. I could definitely see it. I think Bron Breakker is definitely one of the favorites, before I even look at the odds page, to come out on top, head to another match with CM Punk. It does make a whole lot of sense. I think it's interesting that Finn Balor is being refused entry into this match by Adam Pearce when he is seemingly feuding with CM Punk a fair bit. Maybe, much like I talked about the Jade Cargill, Jordan Grace stall feud before we get to WrestleMania, maybe that's going to be CM Punk's stall feud. It'll be Finn Balor versus CM Punk for a month or two before we get to whoever his WrestleMania opponent is going to be, probably Bron Breakker. But who knows? Let's jump into what the odds are picking. Right now, top odds are on Roman Reigns, but not too close behind him, Bron Breakker. Sort of a massive cavity, and then Sami Zayn, LA Knight, and Oba Femi all coming up, as well as Gunther in those, pretty tight odds. I think it's interesting Roman Reigns being up the top here. I don't think he needs to win a Royal Rumble. We've seen him win it before. He kind of comes back, demands attention, and gets what he wants in storyline and in character. And so he can just come on out. He can say that he wants to go after CM Punk's title. He can have it. He can come out. He can say he wants to go after Drew McIntyre's title. He can have it. Whereas I think a Bron Breakker just makes more sense that he might need that Royal Rumble. Like, he got the shot. He came up short, and now he needs another shot. And so I'm actually going to agree with Josh on this one. I'm going to go with Bron Breakker as my my preferred winner. I wouldn't be mad if we got Obafemi coming out as winner. I do think maybe Obafemi versus Gunther is where we head, just two unstoppable forces going head to head, but we don't know the exact combination. I think Sami Zayn may make an appearance, but he may also be pretty destroyed from the earlier match if he doesn't come out on top. But it is lining up to be quite an interesting match. I think we'll also see probably the return of Dominic Mysterio if he's good to go. Possibly a Brock Lesnar appearance, especially if he's going to go up against Gunther or Obafemi at WrestleMania, another big meaty men matchup. I think Finn Balor can probably sneak his way into the match. Maybe he attacks a Kit Wilson or somebody like that who's got a bit of momentum behind them. Chris Jericho return, entirely possible. Well, thank you very much for listening to me talk to you for the last half an hour. And if you want to listen to more, you can head to our Facebook page, facebook.com/wrestling R&D up, or our Twitter page, twitter.com/wrestling R&D up, or our YouTube page, youtube.com/wrestling RND up. And we will catch you next week with the results from the Royal Rumble.